In the last week of 2021, a peculiar video circled through the internet. It showed a Bundeswehr soldier with the name of Sgt Major Oberfeldwebel Andreas Anton Oberauer, and he issued a warning directed at our politicians that they are to rescind all of their corona policies. The ultimatum, he said, was to be up at 4 p.m., but he did not quite specify the date, and neither did he explain what would follow if people would not listen to him. Presumably, after the date has lapsed, he had issued a second video in which he revealed the nature of his warning. He ordered his subordinates to dress in their uniforms and to turn up on the streets to guard the overall protest that you may have read about in your news media or maybe even seen on TV. There are protests all over the country. They are called street walks. Because they are not formally registered as a protest. There are no speakers, there are no banners, there are no posters, nothing really outside of the citizens showing up to show the authorities that they are not comfortable with what is going on with all these lockdowns and all these policies. And he, of course, had no authority to send any of subordinates into protests or to guard protests or whatever, and of course nobody followed him. It was wicked, and quite frankly, I think this is the result of all these lockdowns tearing down our mental health. This may also be the case for Mr. Oberauer. I'm not saying that his mental health is compromised forever and that he can't work other jobs or anything. He may seek some counseling. He is a religious Christian, and maybe he should look for a priest to talk to. Alternatively, he might find a shrink. But I think also he must recognize that he's under duress, and a lot of us are, so that may be temporary. He should not worry about it, but also he must recognize that not everybody who is on our side is in a good mental shape. So before I proceed, I just want to mention that, of course, this is not legal. You cannot send your subordinates to take part in something that is not work related, and neither is it allowed in Germany to wear the uniform out of the professional military setting. If you don't have a special permit for it, there are occasions where you may get a special permit for it, but not without that. And you're also not supposed to conduct any activism in the line of your military work. After work, yes, without uniform, etc., you can take part in all activities that are activism and so on, but you are not supposed to take your activism onto the military base. You're not supposed to influence the subordinates in a political manner. I think that Sgt Major Oberfeldwebel Oberauer criticized, among other things, was the so-called Duldungspflicht. Duldungspflicht is the policy of administering vaccines in general to our soldiers. And I think there is a policy in place in all countries, not just in Germany. And what I say now about the policies in Germany may be applicable to your countries as well. Duldungspflicht can be directly translated to obligation duty. This sounds very Orwellian, and obviously it doesn't give away what it is really about, but it is about the entirety of vaccines that are to be administered to a soldier. You can imagine that if a soldier goes on a mission, he obviously needs to have vaccines that combat diseases that are endemic in different countries and not his own. And therefore, additional vaccines are necessary if somebody fights in the military service. And on top of that, there is the usual basis scheme. This is called the basis vaccine scheme in Germany, Basis Impfschema. And what it includes here is the measles, hepatitis A and B, mumps, rubella, tetanus, and the flu. And it should be quite obvious that something like tetanus is absolutely essential for military servicemen, because this is a disease that is very dangerous, or very often deadly, and can be transmitted through open wounds. Tetanus also has very robust spores that can be found in the soils everywhere. And if a soldier is outside exercising or on a mission and he gets some wound that may be polluted in one way or the other, then he is, capable of attracting this terrible disease. Many of these vaccines are very popular anyways because they are very safe and very effective. They have to be given only 1 or 2, 3 times, not many often, and then you are done with it, right? They are really effective vaccines. Obviously, the safety and efficiency profile of the old vaccines of the basis vaccine scheme is different from the new edition. The Standing Vaccination Recommendation Commission, the STIKO, that's a government body advising our government about all issues vaccine, has recommended that the first booster shot for all adults should be applied after 3 months. That's what they recommend. And that gives away that nobody really thinks this is a lasting effect. And even against the grave cases, as they usually say now, their confidence in that effect is also very limited. If they say, well, we recommend a new shot already after 3 months, right? This shows a very limited confidence in the effectiveness of that vaccine. I do not want to say that I know better. It is entirely possible that already the first shot does prepare your immune system to some degree against the exposure to that new virus. That is totally possible. I'm not giving you any medical advice. You make your own decisions. I just give you some information and some ways of thinking about the problem at hand. So I'm not saying do not take the vaccine. I'm just saying their confidence is that you need a booster shot after 3 months again, but also you could already be to some degree, your immune system could to some degree already be prepared for the exposure of that virus after the very first jab, and then with future jabs it may even become better. So I don't know it, right? I want to clarify what I do know and what I don't know. This may be conducive to your health to take the vaccine. I just leave it to you. And what is clear is, however, that no matter how you think about it, the new vaccine does not have the same level of effectiveness that the vaccine against the measles has, for example. I do not want to say that you may be better off taking the vaccine. Neither do I want to say that you are better off not taking the vaccine. And I just want you to remember that we do not know the effects of repeated, constantly and regularly repeated vaccines over a long time, but neither do we know the effects of occasional, also repeated infections with the virus. A lot of people talk about their fears about the long-term side effects of the vaccine, but also take into account, please, if you make your personal individual decision, that we don't know the long-term side effects of a repeated, not as regular, but repeated infection with the coronavirus itself, because stuff can turn up later again and again. For example, the chickenpox usually returns as shingles, right? So one infection at an earlier stage in your life can lead to a different kind of disease down the road, and we don't have good knowledge about the new coronavirus so far. So only because you are afraid of the long-term effects of this consistently applied vaccine does not mean that you are necessarily better off exposing yourself to a repeated infection with that virus. Also, I think for most of us it will be a mix of both things, right? And we also don't quite know the long-term effects coming from both sides. So make your decisions based on all of the information and don't just listen to one side. Because it's so individual, because everybody really has to make his choices and the viruses keep changing, you have to consider how your personal body is built. So a young soldier, an athletic, usually man, sometimes a woman, a young, fit, fighting fit person may be better off, will not always be, but maybe better off being exposed to the virus than taking the vaccine. Our media and our politicians, however, have decided the entire battle against this virus were an act of solidarity, and even more so getting vaccinated were. And I don't know what exactly they try to base this on. I have made an entire video actually explaining how I don't quite see the externalities of not getting vaccinated or of getting vaccinated, and even the Robert Koch Institute, which is a government body in Germany, a research institute, cannot quantify how much less often a vaccinated person would transmit COVID-19 in contrast to an unvaccinated one. The difference is marginal, and I would say, with this new variant, the Omicron variant coming along, being just like 10% as deadly as the previous Delta variant wave, it becomes increasingly meaningless whether or not it's more easily transmitted with the vaccine or without the vaccine, or with the vaccine. It doesn't matter anymore, because when it comes to transmissibility, this new variant just goes through the entire population very quickly. It does not really matter much. It did not really matter much before with the Delta variant, and I think it becomes almost an absurd obsession. The solidarity becomes an absurd obsession from our elites that is not founded on any science whatsoever. Now, this attitude that everybody needs to get vaccinated in the military contrasts with how the forces treated those who lapsed the influenza vaccine, because in two open letters, Lieutenant Colonel Oberstleutnant Daniel Futschig had stated that there was a statement by the Schlichtungsausschuss, that is a committee that sprang up to negotiate the pros and contras in the forces about the question of including COVID-19 into the overall vaccination scheme. And that committee, Schlichtungsausschuss, has stated on their meeting on the 22nd of November last year that only 90,000 men and women in the forces were vaccinated against the flu. Our forces have 180,000 members, soldiers and administrative members. If only 90,000 receive a vaccine shot every year, that means a lot of people come, get it regularly, but eventually some people will stop. Probably new recruits will be more consistent with what is asked of them. So it's not like half of the forces get the vaccine regularly. It's just that they come and go. But what becomes clear is when every year 90,000 individuals in the armed forces get vaccinated in a group of 180,000, that the overall a concern about the vaccination was much less pronounced in the past than it is today. What becomes very clear is that the COVID-19 vaccine deniers are treated much more harshly than their influenza counterparts. And either you have a policy that's applied equally, or you may consider to scrap it altogether and roll it out individually. It can be for different missions, for foreign missions, military missions, or if there is an influenza wave coming along that is very dangerous. Sometimes you have in between influenza waves or some other diseases that come along and that are a threat to your forces, and you just roll that out. But then maybe you should have a well-reasoned approach to this, and not all the media screaming like crazy in one voice, and the propaganda and the divisiveness that we see right now, the aggression that we see right now surrounding this overall policy with regards to the corona, the new corona virus. One side effect of the politicization of the COVID-19 epidemic is that many soldiers don't feel they are properly advised by their duty doctors. In his letters, Lieutenant Colonel Oberstleutnant Daniel Futschig reported that comrades had doctors who did not react to mentions of previous diseases, allergies, and did not answer questions about ingredients of the vaccines. Of course, I'm not saying that previous illnesses or an allergy is a reason why you should not take the vaccine. I don't know. I'm not giving any advices. I just say that the soldiers felt they were blocked off. So the doctors did not cite any studies, or they did not, mention there is a study with your specific situation, your specific, condition, diseases, allergies, and in combination to that condition, the vaccine behaves in this or that fashion. That's not what happened. And you know what? If you don't have some studies at hand, you could at least give some anecdotal evidence. Like, maybe you know of a vaccine that behaves, or some medication that behaves in some manners, has similar side effect profiles as the vaccine. And then you know how from other studies, from earlier studies, how a given allergy may react to a given side effect profile, let's say, right? I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying, well, this is what you would expect in a patient conversation, even if the disease is new and they don't have full information, and nobody has full information. At least they could say, well, this reminds me of something that is similar, to kind of navigate his patients through his choices, because ultimately all doctors are supposed to make advice first and foremost. There are few exceptions in emergency cases when a doctor just makes the decision for a patient and doesn't ask any questions. Usually a doctor is a consultant and an advisor to his patient, and that is his role, and we should remember that. A similar situation was also reported in an interview with Reitschuster.de. That is the private blog of journalist Boris Reitschuster. In that interview, Sgt Feldwebel Robert Müller reported that he was eventually, after some discussions about his refusal to take the vaccine, etc., he was eventually sent to a private doctor. So not a duty doctor in this case, but a private doctor. And even there, he was just blocked off with all his questions. Everybody just wanted to assist the military in cramming down this vaccine on our soldiers. Müller was also arrested for his refusal to take the vaccine. He is actually not opposed to the vaccine itself, but he says he is against the coercion that comes with it. So he was arrested from the 7th of December to the 13th on his military base in Minden. This drew some vigils, some protests, and occasionally, they are just a few days he was released. Such as disciplinary arrest can be ordered for between 3 days and 3 weeks under Article 26 WDO. This is the law this is based on, and such a punishment is usually considered lightweight and does not require any legal proceedings. It can just be ordered. You don't go to trial or anything. It comes into effect directly for refusing orders, for example. But it does not mean that a disciplinary arrest is entirely random. Of course, you are supposed to only give orders that are military related. You cannot ask your soldiers to walk your dog, to wash your car. Peculiar enough, the law does not actually specify any punishment for the refusal to take any vaccine. In Article 17A for Soldier Law SG, it says, if the soldier refuses a reasonable medical treatment and his ability to work or make a living is impaired, as a result, he can be denied care. Now that care is not specified much in the other paragraph. You also hear that the military has a responsibility, a caretaking function for all the soldiers and their families, and so this is broadly defined. But it really does not sound like if you don't follow that rule, then you get locked away, you get demoted, you get punished. It just says they can't care for you if you refuse to take medical care. A different way you can think about it still, of course, is that if somebody refuses to take an order, any military order, he's breaking the chain of command. But then again, the order must be of a military nature. And the question here is a little bit if it is a military order to ask people to get vaccinated against COVID and punish upon refusal, but not do the same thing against the flu. I think we're now at the stage in the pandemic when young men are not terribly likely to be compromised by a disease, either be it the flu or COVID-19, or not compromised much, and therefore the military effectiveness is not quite at risk for refusing such a thing, such an order, and it makes it almost a private order. If some officers just politicize and he believes everything he hears on the media and so on, this is a private wish, not a military related order, in my view. Müller is very unlikely to be the last case who is going to be arrested for refusing the COVID-19 vaccine. There had been a recent letter to all channels of the Bundeswehr written by Inspector des Heeres Alfons Mais, and in that letter he speaks of his expectation that this is going to happen more often, and he quotes a verdict against a different soldier, a Sgt Major, who had just suffered a loss in the administrative court. And this Sgt Major was arrested for refusing some different vaccines, not the COVID related stuff. And in that letter, Alfons Mais makes it out to be that basically any superior at the armed forces can ask his subordinate to take any vaccines, no matter how endemic the disease is in the country, no matter how dangerous the disease is, how transmissible it is, and so on. That, because of this one case, this one verdict, this can be parlayed to all diseases and all vaccines. I think this is mistaken, and I hope some court will prove him wrong. Because this would just open the gates to personal tastes. Some people consider this vaccine, like the flu, very important, and then obviously a lot of people don't. Hepatitis A and B may be more interesting actually for soldiers who are on a mission or who go on a mission, because it's not endemic here. Really, we have some thousand cases every year in Germany. It's not an endemic disease, and most cases are people who came from outside, from places where it's more relevant. Maybe hepatitis was even one of the vaccines that was refused by this Sergeant Major in that quoted court verdict. I didn't quite find it in the verdict, but I found that he refused tetanus. And as I said already, tetanus is a disease that is very dangerous to soldiers because they suffer wounds more often than, let's say, somebody in the office. And therefore, this is something that maybe you should consider to order, and maybe there should be some punishments if people refuse to take such a vaccine. But also, not quite, because it does not really affect other soldiers. This is now about your own ability, your own fighting ability, versus the safety of the troops, versus your ability, your country's ability to defend itself. Tetanus is not easily transmissible. As I said, the spores, they are very, very robust. You find them in the soil everywhere. But from one person to the next, the transmission is very unlikely. Unlike you rub your bodies against each other or whatever. If there are no wounds and nothing really enters some wounds, tetanus is not easily transmissible. Quoting this case of the soldier who refuses tetanus and possibly some other relevant vaccines, Inspector des Heeres Alfons Mais said that a refusal to follow orders is a special category of law. It's a Wehrstraftat, which can be punished with a ban on promotions, a demotion, and a cut in salary. He also said that for soldiers who served less than 4 years, as so-called Zeitsoldat, that is, you have a temporary contract that has a expiration date from the beginning, that anybody who served in the armed forces for fewer than 4 years can be dismissed, or should be dismissed, and also people who voluntarily take part in military training. The law to fire these contract Zeitsoldat soldiers, Article 55 5 of the Soldier Law SG, allows only to do so if there is a jeopardy to the military order, or if there is a grave danger to the reputation of the military. A threat to the military order is also the prerequisite of a disciplinary arrest. If you arrest somebody for refusing your orders, then you have to you have to be unsuccessful of punishing him in the first place, and that is then your last resort. You have to try something else first, or somebody must pose a threat to the military order. And to me, I mean, if I hear this, the entire military order, this sounds a bit far-fetched. If somebody just refuses a vaccine, and in this case, it doesn't even really matter if it is the COVID-19 vaccine or the tetanus vaccine. I don't believe that the entire military order is at stake if somebody refuses a vaccination. A previous verdict suggests, however, that the military order is endangered if there is a risk of imitation from other comrades. Now, going back to the tetanus case, and maybe it's also hepatitis A and B, there is not even a big risk at all, is there? Because they are very popular, very effective, very safe vaccinations, right? So it's very unlikely that there will be a large imitation factor. This is, however, the case with COVID-19. If one person does not get the vaccine, other people may see it and may want to imitate that behavior. Also, according to these previous rules, a repetition of disobedience does also constitute a threat to the military order. However, as I've already explained, disobedience means you have to have a valid military order, a military-related command that you disregard. Then you might be a threat to the military order. When it comes to COVID, it is not quite clear whether half a year protection from one shot does really make a big difference. Also, you see a lot of breakthrough infections, and new variants don't quite match the capabilities of a given vaccine. This is what we see with Omicron right now, and so on and so on. And also, we don't know the long-term effects of continuously giving that vaccine. So it's not quite clear if the military order is actually threatened more by soldiers who, let's say, get just occasionally infected with a virus, or by soldiers who take the vaccine regularly, then also have some breakthrough infections, but also have the side effects from getting a medication on a regular basis. And as we still don't know what is the bigger threat, I think a dismissal of the Zeitsoldaten, temporary contract soldiers, or even arrest of some soldiers for a couple of days, that's a bit over the top, to say the least. When it comes to COVID, it is not quite clear whether half a year protection from one shot does really make a big difference. Also, you see a lot of breakthrough infections, and new variants don't quite match the capabilities of a given vaccine. This is what we see with Omicron right now, and so on and so on. And also, we don't know the long-term effects of continuously giving that vaccine. So it's not quite clear if the military order is actually threatened more by soldiers who, let's say, get just occasionally infected with a virus, or by soldiers who take the vaccine regularly, then also have some breakthrough infections, but also have the side effects from getting a medication on a regular basis. But the military order, the capability of the army to operate, is also exactly the defining line of what makes a command a military command, or just some random wish of some superior. So if the vaccine is obviously conducive to the work of the army, which is effective like the vaccine against the measles, right? Then obviously this has huge effects if it's against diseases that are endemic in different countries, and you send troops over, and of course they have to be protected, and so on. The purpose becomes clear immediately. Also, when there is, of course, a flu wave that is threatening the health of the soldiers, and it is a strong version of the flu virus, then also there's no question that this is preserving the military order. It's preserving the capability of the army to fight. But this is, of course, not the case if we are talking about a vaccine with far fewer capabilities. It does not protect the individual and the group as a whole against the disease as other vaccinations do. So that was it for today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.